Dust clung to her travel-worn dress as Clara Hayes stepped off the stagecoach at Yuma Territorial Prison, staring in disbelief at the iron gates before her. She had arrived with hope brimming in her heart, only to discover the man she'd traveled across the continent to marry had been locked away for a crime everyone claimed he did not commit. With a single tattered photograph and the weight of uncertain vows, Clara resolved to find her husband-to-be and piece together a future. What she didn't expect, however, was to inherit his drought-stricken ranch and a whirlwind of secrets that threatened to pull her under. Clara Hayes gripped the edge of her seat as the rickety stagecoach bounced along the dusty trail toward Yuma, Arizona territory. She had lost count of the days since she left Boston, a world of polite society and bustling city streets. Her gloved hands trembled in her lap, the folded advertisement for a mail-order bride arrangement crackling each time she flexed her fingers. She was no stranger to risk having survived the lean years after her parents' passing, but this felt like an entirely new frontier of danger. The wide-brimmed hat of the stagecoach driver framed a sun-baked desert that stretched to the horizon. Every few minutes he would call down to the passengers about a mesa or a butte they passed, warning that bandits sometimes roamed this territory. Despite his caution, Clara's mind was far from highwaymen. She was rehearsing the scene she expected at her destination, a weary fiancé waiting outside the stagecoach office, arms open in greeting, perhaps as nervous as she was. She'd made this journey for one reason: to meet Wyatt Cooper, the man with whom she had exchanged nearly a dozen letters. Each letter was penned with a certain earnestness that caught Clara off guard. In them, Wyatt described a ranch that needed a firm hand and a warm heart. He confessed a lonely existence in the wake of his family's hardships, culminating in a tragedy that left him with a solitary ranch, the Cooper's Crest. Despite his somber circumstances, Wyatt wrote of new beginnings and a longing for companionship. He had been looking for a woman of grit and resolve, someone to share his burdens and joys alike. Clara believed she fit that description. Having managed her family's small farm in Maine after her father's death, she was no stranger to long work days and the demands of the land. Yet fear crept in under her stoic facade. Mail-order bride advertisements often carried more heartbreak than happily ever afters, and she was praying she hadn't made a dreadful mistake. Her heart hammered as the stagecoach rattled toward the outskirts of Yuma. The prison walls loomed ahead like a warning. Her letter from Wyatt mentioned nothing about incarceration, only that he would meet her in Yuma, because he had business there before they traveled to his ranch. No mention of prison. No mention of a crime. When the stage finally halted, she saw the swirling dust settle around a trio of Arizona Rangers standing guard. Off to the side, a stocky man in a bowler hat clutched a ledger. Eyes shifting from one passenger to the next, he stepped forward when Clara emerged. "Miss Hayes?" he asked, tipping his hat politely, his voice tinged with unease. Clara's heart tightened. "Yes, I'm Clara Hayes." She smoothed her dress and tried to steady her breathing. "I'm Horace Whitaker, attorney at law," he said. "You're here for Wyatt Cooper, I presume?" The dryness in Clara's throat was palpable. "Yes," she managed. "Is he here?" Horace's expression twisted awkwardly. "I'm afraid there's been a turn of events. Wyatt Cooper is temporarily indisposed at Yuma Territorial Prison. There's been an accusation. He wanted me to tell you the truth in person." She felt as if the ground had fallen out from beneath her. Her fiancé, the man who had promised a new life together, was behind bars. Was this the reason for his cryptic mention of business in Yuma? It was hardly the reception she had envisioned. Horace's sympathetic smile did little to calm her confusion. "He's asked me to escort you there, if you wish to see him." Still reeling, Clara found herself fighting tears, but she squared her shoulders. "Yes, take me to him. I have questions." The prison's stony facade dwarfed Clara. Black iron gates framed a grim courtyard, and guards inspected every visitor with hawkish eyes. Her attorney guide hurried her along as though he wanted to conclude their business with as little public notice as possible. When a guard recognized Horace, he beckoned them to follow. The walkway clanged with each step. Clara clasped her reticule to her chest, feeling as if every set of eyes was upon her. Faint voices echoed from the cells, a chorus of discontent mutterings and occasional jeers. She took in her surroundings with a sickening sense of dread. This was not how she had envisioned meeting Wyatt Cooper for the first time. They finally halted at a barred cell where Wyatt stood. He was tall, even behind the bars, with broad shoulders and a confident posture. His hair was a dusty brown, and faint lines etched his eyes, suggesting days or weeks of worry. Still a flicker of relief sparked in his gaze as soon as he recognized Clara. "Miss Hayes," he said, voice quiet and hoarse from disuse. "I'm so sorry for this." Clara wanted to turn away, to flee the prison altogether. But her heart would not let her. She had come here for a promise for a life they had begun to imagine through pen and ink. "Wyatt Cooper," she murmured, stepping closer to the bars, forcing courage into her voice. "I need to know what's happened." He placed a hand on the metal near hers, but not touching. "I was accused of murdering an investor in Tucson, a man named Cyrus Lancaster. Cyrus was found shot near our ranch. We had an argument over a land dispute weeks before. The sheriff latched onto the first suspect. And here I am." Wyatt's gaze flitted to Horace, who nodded in silent confirmation. "We're working to prove his innocence," the attorney explained. "We have reason to believe Wyatt was set up by someone with a grudge." But the local judge, a certain Isaac Parker, yes, the same Isaac Parker once dubbed the hanging judge, is notoriously harsh. We're fighting uphill. Mention of the infamous Judge Isaac Parker made Clara's stomach turn. She had read newspapers in Boston with stories of Parker's relentless sentencing. A pang of fear seeped into her resolve. Wyatt continued softly. "I never wanted this for you, Clara. If you wish to return east, I won't hold it against you. But if you're willing to stand by me, there's something important you should know. The ranch is in desperate need of help. There's a ranch hand, Javier Delgado, who's been loyal. But we're behind on taxes. The livestock is dwindling. I need you. I need someone I trust to keep it afloat until I'm freed." Clara swallowed. All her life she had faced challenges. But this was beyond any adversity she had imagined. The choice weighed heavily on her heart. Wyatt, whether guilty or innocent, was not the man she had pictured. But her instincts told her that he was telling the truth. Something in his eyes, the same sincerity she found in his letters, cut through the gloom of this place. She reached through the bars. "I came here for a marriage, Wyatt Cooper. Whether or not it happens immediately, I stand by the vow we exchanged in letters. I'll keep your ranch going. I'll do whatever it takes. But promise me you'll fight for your freedom." Emotion flickered in his face, relief blending with admiration. "I'll fight," he said. "I promise." Horace coughed politely. "We should go. Time's nearly up." With a final look, Clara turned and followed Horace down the corridor, heart pounding, mind swimming. She had made a choice, a leap of faith. Little did she know how challenging the road ahead would be. The dusty stage out of Yuma carried Clara and Horace deeper into the Arizona territory until they reached a small station near the outskirts of Wyatt's ranch. It was a day's travel punctuated by scorching sun, relentless wind, and an unshakable sense of foreboding. Horace offered polite conversation, but Clara's thoughts were consumed with the question of how she would keep the ranch afloat. Late afternoon brought them to a modest fence line where a roan mare grazed near a tumble of cacti. Beyond it, Clara saw a stretch of land that seemed parched by the sun. A lone ranch house stood at the end of a winding path, flanked by a half-collapsed barn. Her heart clenched at the sight. How was she to mend this place alone? A figure appeared on horseback, cantering toward them. Closer, she saw a wiry man with a sun-creased face. He had thick black hair tied behind his neck and wore a broad sombrero to shield himself from the sun. He dismounted gracefully and approached with cautious curiosity. "Senor Whitaker," he said, nodding. Then his gaze turned to Clara. "You must be Miss Hayes. I'm Javier Delgado, the foreman of Cooper's Crest." Clara tried to smile, though her nerves were frayed. "Yes. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Delgado. Wyatt mentioned you in his letters." Javier's expression softened. "I wish we met under better circumstances." Horace cleared his throat. "Javier, Miss Hayes will be staying here overseeing the ranch until Wyatt's situation is resolved. She'll need your full support." Javier wiped his brow with a bandana. "Of course, I'll do whatever I can to help." He turned back to Clara. "Things have been tough since Wyatt left. We've lost 2 ranch hands who didn't believe in working without the boss around. The bank is circling like vultures for payment, and water's been scarce." Clara's mouth went dry, but she forced steady resolve into her voice. "We'll find a way. Together." Javier nodded respect, flickering in his eyes at her determination. Horace offered some final words of encouragement, then took his leave. Now, in the waning daylight, Clara stood at the threshold of Cooper's Crest, her new home and her new responsibility. With Javier's help, she explored the premises. The main house, though small, had once been charming. Its wooden floors creaked with each step. Dust coated the windowsills, and a few chairs had been knocked over, perhaps in the abruptness of Wyatt's arrest. In the kitchen, a single pot hung on the wall, and the pantry looked almost bare. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Clara took a seat on a wobbly chair. "How far behind are we on everything?" she asked. Javier sighed. Wyatt poured every last cent into ranch improvements and legal fees. "The taxes are overdue, and the bank is pressing for payment. We've also got a sick cow that might infect the others if we don't get a veterinarian soon. We need supplies, water feed, everything." For a moment, Clara felt a flicker of panic. She was alone with no nearby family or friends and minimal resources. The enormity of the challenge threatened to drown her. But then she recalled Wyatt's unwavering gaze through the prison bars, remembered his earnest words from the letters. If she gave up now, everything he built would crumble, and so would her faith in herself. She stood, determination renewing. "We start tomorrow morning. At sunrise, I want to see every inch of this place. We'll take an inventory of what we have, figure out what we need, and find a way to pay for it." Javier's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. Then he grinned. "Sí, señorita. We'll get through this." And so, as the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, Clara Hayes braced herself for a future fraught with hardship. Yet hope still glimmered like the last rays of daylight across the Arizona sky. Daybreak found Clara standing at the threshold of the barn, inhaling the crisp desert air. She was bone-tired, but fueled by the adrenaline of purpose. True to her word, she and Javier began an exhaustive assessment of the ranch's resources. Inside the barn, they found 2 aging horses. Rosemary, a bay mare with kind eyes, and Titan, a stocky gelding, who eyed Clara suspiciously. They also had a handful of scrawny cattle, one that coughed and wheezed ominously. A small flock of chickens scurried around, but their egg production seemed meager at best. In a worn ledger, they listed everything from feed to nails. The picture was grim. They had enough supplies to last maybe a month, if carefully rationed. The well water was low, a worrisome sign of possible drought. "We have some ore in the riverbed that might be of value," Javier mentioned, wiping sweat from his brow. "But that's been a back-burner project. We only tried panning once. Not much luck." Clara considered this. Every possibility, no matter how remote, might keep the ranch afloat. "We might try again if things get desperate," she said, though panning for gold or silver was far from guaranteed income. Their next task was to ride into the nearest town, Redwood Gulch, to check prices on supplies and arrange a veterinarian for the sick cow. Clara rode Rosemary, feeling the stir of energy coursing through the horse. Javier trotted beside her on Titan. The late morning sun beat down, and desert winds kicked up dust devils along the trail. Redwood Gulch was hardly a bustling metropolis, but it boasted a few mercantiles, a blacksmith, a sheriff's office, and a modest saloon. Fresh wagon tracks scored the main street. Old boards lined the walkways in front of shops where storekeepers tried to lure passers-by. Clara dismounted, trying to project confidence despite her rumpled dress and travel-worn face. She followed Javier into the mercantile, owned by a stern woman named Martha Rourke. Martha eyed the newcomers. "Well, if it isn't Javier Delgado. Brought a friend, I see." "Morning, Miss Rourke," Javier said, nodding politely. "This is Clara Hayes Wyatt Cooper's fiancé." Martha's eyebrows rose. "Cooper's fiancé, huh? Heard some talk he's locked up." Clara felt a flush of embarrassment. "Yes, ma'am. I'm stepping in to manage Cooper's crest in his absence." Martha's expression softened with a trace of pity. "That's a tall order, dear. What can I get you with as much dignity as she could muster?" Clara read out her list, grain medicine. Basic provisions. As the items tallied on a piece of parchment, Martha's frown deepened. "That's a heap of supplies, and you got an outstanding tab with me from last month. Where's Wyatt's money?" Clara's chest tightened. She had little more than a few coins left from her journey. She glanced at Javier, who seemed equally tense. "How about we do half now?" "Half later," Clara ventured, voice wavering slightly. Martha pursed her lips. "I'm not a charitable institution, Miss Hayes. I knew Wyatt's father and I gave credit for his sake. But times are tough all around. I'll need payment soon, or I won't be able to give you any more credit." Under Martha's stern gaze, Clara reluctantly nodded. Understood. Leaving the mercantile, they had only managed to secure some feed and minimal medicine for the ailing cow. Clara felt the weight of their predicament more acutely. Their next stop was the veterinarian's modest office. An older man by the name of Dr. Robert McNeil greeted them. "Wyatt Cooper's ranch." "Yes, I can come out tomorrow," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "But I'll need $1 in advance for my wagon and time." Clara's face fell. She only had $1 and a few cents left. She handed it to him reluctantly, hoping it wouldn't be for nothing. As they left, Javier noticed a notice pinned on the community board outside the sheriff's office, a mention of a fundraiser dance at the Redwood Saloon, with proceeds going to the local church. He pointed it out to Clara. People from all over attend. Sometimes they run auctions there for goods or even services. Might be a chance for us to sell something or make connections. Clara swallowed. We don't have much to sell except the ranch itself. Javier shrugged, pushing aside the gloom. Still a place like that folks talk. You might pick up information that could help Wyatt. News. Gossip. Who knows? With that seed of possibility in mind, Clara found herself open to any opportunity that could keep Cooper's Crest from sinking further. If Wyatt's freedom depended on a good lawyer, and time, the ranch's survival, depended on her. Upon returning to Cooper's Crest, Clara and Javier poured the new feed into the trough and administered the veterinarian's medicine to the wheezing cow. Night fell, but Clara's tasks were not done. Inside the house, she set about cleaning the neglected rooms, determined to make it feel like a real home. She found a battered trunk in one corner of the bedroom, inside which lay a few of Wyatt's personal items. Letters from his deceased mother, a tattered Bible, and a locket with a photograph of Wyatt as a boy. Reading a letter from Wyatt's mother, Clara felt tears sting her eyes. The words were affectionate, praising Wyatt's determination and gentle nature. It struck Clara how many ghosts might be haunting him, and how lonely he must have felt before he reached out for a mail-order bride. Exhausted, she finally collapsed into bed. Before she drifted off, she imagined Wyatt behind cold bars, locked away from the wide-open vistas he loved. She vowed to do whatever it took to see him cleared of these accusations. The next morning, Dr. McNeil arrived in a rattling wagon. Clara greeted him outside the barn, offering him a glass of water from their precious supply. He set to work examining the sick cow, muttering about possible lung infection. Shot of antibiotic might help, he said, rummaging through his bag. But you need to keep her warm and fed. He administered the injection, then prepared to leave. I'm sorry for your troubles, Miss Hayes, he said, glancing around. I heard about Wyatt's predicament. I hope everything works out. Clara nodded, appreciating the man's kindness. With the immediate crisis somewhat handled, she turned her thoughts back to Redwood Gulch's upcoming dance, a flicker of an idea forming in her mind. That afternoon, Clara was startled when she heard the sound of horses outside. Expecting Javier, or perhaps a passing traveler, she was unprepared to see a tall woman dismount gracefully. The woman had raven black hair pinned up, wearing a traveling dress, more refined than anything Clara had seen in Redwood Gulch. She introduced herself with a confident smile. Good afternoon. My name is Beatrice Rosewood. I've come to speak with Wyatt Cooper, if he's about. Clara's suspicion flared. Wyatt is away, she said carefully. May I ask what business you have with him? Beatrice brushed dust off her gloves. I represent a consortium of investors from Tucson interested in acquiring certain ranch lands. We had an arrangement with Mr. Cooper. Clara's heart pounded. Wyatt's not here, and Cooper's Crest is not for sale. Beatrice's lips curled in a knowing smirk. Not for sale yet, perhaps. But these are changing times, Miss Hayes. Clara Hayes. I'm his fiancée. Surprise flickered across Beatrice's face, quickly replaced by a calculating expression. Fiancée, is that? So I'd heard a rumor about Mr. Cooper's predicament. Is it true he's in Yuma Territorial Prison? Clara stiffened. He's there on false charges. Beatrice sighed theatrically. What a pity. Well, if you change your mind about the land, here's my card. She handed Clara an embossed visiting card. We are prepared to be quite generous. Sometimes the best way to save something is to let it go. Clara stood firm, refusing to voice the anger she felt. Beatrice nodded politely and departed her horse, kicking up dust as she rode away. The unwelcome visit left Clara uneasy. She wondered whether Beatrice Rosewood, or her associates, had anything to do with the accusations against Wyatt. The Saturday night dance at Redwood Saloon arrived faster than Clara anticipated. She donned her cleanest dress, a simple blue cotton frock, and pinned her hair in a neat bun. Javier escorted her wearing a clean shirt and a vest. Their plan was simple: Mingle listen. See if there was any talk of Cyrus Lancaster or Wyatt's case. They also hoped to make connections, any that might help the ranch or Wyatt's defense. The saloon was alive with laughter and fiddle music. Lanterns lit the interior, casting shadows on wooden walls adorned with old wanted posters. At the far end, a makeshift stage held a trio of musicians. Townsfolk swirled around the dance floor, skirts swishing and boots thumping. Clara felt a spike of nervousness. She was unaccustomed to social events like this, especially among strangers. But she forced a small smile and accepted Javier's offer to dance. The swirl of color and the boisterous crowd enveloped her, momentarily lifting her spirits. During a break in the music, she overheard a hushed conversation between two men near the bar. "I tell you, Lancaster had plenty of enemies," one man said. "Why they're pinning it on Cooper is beyond me." Clara froze, straining to listen. "But Lancaster had a deal going sour with Cooper," the other man replied. "And folks say Cooper threatened him. That's enough for the sheriff." Martha Rourke, the mercantile owner, sidled up to Clara. "You hearing the gossip, dear?" she said quietly. "This is how folks talk around here. Nothing is sacred for long." Clara faced Martha, her voice low. "Is there any real evidence against Wyatt?" Martha shrugged. "If there is, I haven't heard of it. The rumor is he was seen riding out the night Lancaster was killed. But that's all talk." Clara's gaze swept the room. "Who benefits most if Wyatt goes to prison?" "Because I was visited by a woman named Beatrice Rosewood, talking about wanting to buy the ranch." Martha's eyes lit with recognition. "Rosewood, you say she's a slick one. She's been sniffing around land deals for months. Some folks say she's got more muscle behind her than meets the eye. Could be trouble." A wave of apprehension washed over Clara. Perhaps it was no coincidence that Wyatt was behind bars exactly when these investors were trying to purchase his land. Clara attempted to enjoy the event, but her mind was whirling with conspiracy theories. When a new fiddle tune began, a tall man with salt and pepper hair approached her. She recognized him as Sheriff Abel Townsend. "Miss Hayes," he said, tipping his hat. "Heard you took over Cooper's Crest. Mind if I have a word?" Her pulse quickened. "Not at all." "Sheriff." He guided her to a quieter corner. "I just want you to know we're doing our best to see justice served in Wyatt Cooper's case, but the evidence is stacked. Witnesses claim they saw him riding fast toward Lancaster's ranch the night of the murder." Clara's hands tightened around her skirts. Did anyone see him fire a gun, or see him with Lancaster's body? Townsend shook his head, looking almost regretful. No direct witnesses. But the judge wants a scapegoat. With Wyatt's known feud with Lancaster, it's a neat fit. She hesitated, then dared to ask Sheriff, "Do you believe he did it?" Townsend studied her face. "Between you and me, I ain't so sure. But I can't prove otherwise yet. If I were you, I'd keep my eyes open. There's big money behind some folks who wanted Lancaster out of the picture. Or maybe they wanted the ranch. Hard to say. But watch your back, Miss Hayes." Clara's heart raced. "Thank you, Sheriff." With that sobering exchange, she rejoined Javier. The evening's festivities continued, but the threats looming over Cooper's Crest felt more palpable than ever. They returned to the ranch under a blanket of stars, resolved to be vigilant and to find a way to prove Wyatt's innocence. In the days that followed, Clara busied herself with ranch chores. The sick cow showed signs of improvement, offering a small victory amid the chaos. She even attempted to bake bread to stretch their provisions, though it came out tough and overcooked. Javier offered a good-natured grin and ate it anyway. What weighed on her most was the financial noose tightening around them. Martha Rourke politely reminded Clara that she expected payment soon, and the bank's final notice arrived in the mail, 2 weeks until they would proceed with foreclosure if the ranch's debts remained unpaid. Meanwhile, Horace Whitaker visited from Yuma, bringing news of Wyatt's upcoming hearing, which would decide whether he could be granted bail. He also mentioned that a Pinkerton detective named Edmund Howard might arrive soon. Rumor had it that Pinkerton detectives were being employed by wealthy interests to investigate certain discrepancies. That could be good or bad depending on who's hiring him, Horace mused. If the Pinkertons dig up the truth, it might exonerate Wyatt. Or if they're hired by his enemies, it could bury him deeper. Clara felt a flicker of dread, but she clung to the hope that the truth would prevail. She refused to believe Wyatt was guilty of murder. One sweltering afternoon, Clara decided to do a more thorough cleaning of the house's attic space. It was a cramped, dusty area, accessible by a rickety ladder. She lit a lantern and coughed as she swept away cobwebs. Among old trunks and broken crates, she discovered a small, locked box. Curious, she pried it open with a hairpin. Inside she found letters and documents bearing the signature of Cyrus Lancaster himself. Her heart sped up as she realized they detailed a business arrangement with Wyatt's late father, detailing land rights, water usage, and possible expansions. One letter, dated a year prior to Lancaster's death, mentioned a dispute over a crucial water source at the far edge of the ranch. Lancaster demanded rights to the water, threatening to take drastic measures if he was denied. Clara's pulse throbbed. The letter clearly depicted Lancaster as the aggressor willing to push boundaries. Perhaps this documented dispute could help. She carefully packed the documents, vowing to give them to Horace. If Lancaster had threatened Wyatt or his family, then Wyatt had more reason to fear Lancaster. But it also meant Lancaster may have had other enemies, or that Lancaster was orchestrating events to strong-arm the Coopers. As she descended the ladder, her mind churned with questions. If Lancaster wanted that water source badly enough, maybe another investor or partner of his carried the same greed, culminating in murder. Could they have framed Wyatt to force a quick sale the next day as the sun blazed overhead? A lone rider approached the ranch. He was tall and sharply dressed in a crisp suit, unusual attire for the rough terrain. Clara stood on the porch, shading her eyes to watch him dismount. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said, tipping his fedora. "Edmund Howard, Pinkerton detective." He flashed a small badge. "I've been hired to look into the Lancaster murder. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Clara's heart pounded. She forced a calm expression and invited him inside, offering water. Javier hung back, arms folded, warily observing. Edmund wasted no time. I understand Wyatt Cooper was engaged to you and is currently imprisoned. Did you ever hear him express a desire to kill Cyrus Lancaster?" Clara's stomach tightened. "No, absolutely not. They had disagreements over land, but Wyatt never spoke of violence." The detective's sharp gaze flicked around the living room. "Have you found any letters or documents that might shed light on Lancaster's dealings with Cooper?" She considered mentioning the documents she found in the attic. Her hesitation was brief, but Edmund noticed. "I found some old contracts in the attic," she admitted. "They detail Lancaster's threats over water rights. I plan to give them to Wyatt's attorney." Edmund nodded. "May I see them?" Something in his demeanor made her cautious. He seemed professional, but she couldn't be sure who his employer truly was. "I'm afraid I'd like Horace Whitaker to review them first." The Pinkerton detective gave her a slow nod, concealing whatever reaction he might have had. "Fair enough. Mind if I speak with your ranch hand?" He inclined his head toward Javier. Clara called Javier over. Edmund asked a series of questions about Wyatt's whereabouts and temperament on the days leading up to the murder. Javier told the truth, as he knew it. Wyatt had left to meet Lancaster about the dispute, but Javier never saw him brandish a weapon. After a few more pointed questions, Edmund departed, leaving an unsettling air in his wake. Clara wondered if he was friend or foe. As the detective's visit sank in, Clara and Javier turned their attention to ranch matters. The water supply was dangerously low, and the scorching heat showed no sign of relenting. They decided to inspect a distant corner of the property, rumored to hold a deeper well. The ride took them across sun-baked terrain, with cacti and scrub brush the only vegetation. At last they came upon a half-dug well, abandoned long ago. Clara dismounted and peered into the hole. A small trickle of water glistened at the bottom. Hope flared. "If we can dig deeper and fortify it, maybe we'll have enough water for the livestock," Clara said excitedly. Javier eyed the well. "It will take days to dig, and we need proper tools. But maybe this is the solution." Despite their uncertainty, they returned to the ranch with renewed spirits, convinced that if they could secure a reliable water source, they might stave off foreclosure and keep Cooper's crest alive for Wyatt's return. A week later, Clara and Javier worked tirelessly to improve the old well. In the evenings, Clara pored over the discovered documents, gleaning that Lancaster had multiple investment partners. One name recurred: Bart Howard, a relative of the Pinkerton detective. Or just a coincidence? Meanwhile, Horace reported that Wyatt's hearing was postponed. Judge Isaac Parker claimed new evidence was being gathered. This effectively kept Wyatt locked up, fueling Clara's suspicion that powerful people wanted him silenced. Late one afternoon, a shadow darkened the barn doorway. It was Beatrice Rosewood again this time, accompanied by two men wearing guns on their hips. "Miss Hayes." She began, her tone cool. "Have you reconsidered our offer?" Clara stiffened. "No. Cooper's crest is not for sale." Beatrice glanced at the half-repaired barn, the dusty corral, the parched land. "I admire your determination, but you can't fight the bank. You can't fight progress. All around, ranchers are selling to bigger outfits. Soon you'll be the only holdout." Clara squared her shoulders. "Then I'll be the only holdout." Beatrice's men stepped forward menacingly, but Beatrice raised a hand, stopping them. She offered Clara a pitying smile. "You have until the end of next week to repay the bank loan." "Yes. A shame if you lose it all. Let me know when you see sense." She turned on her heel and left her cohorts, throwing smug looks at Clara and Javier. That evening, Clara and Javier sat at the kitchen table, each lost in grim thought. The finances were dire. Their water supply was still precarious. Foreclosure loomed, and Wyatt's hearing was delayed yet again. Clara gazed at the flickering lantern light and remembered Wyatt's quiet plea through the prison bars. "I need you." She would not abandon him. Taking a deep breath, she formulated a desperate plan. "I'm going to Tucson," she said, surprising Javier. "I need to speak with anyone who knew Lancaster well or who might have had a motive to kill him. If we find the real culprit, Wyatt can go free." Javier frowned. "That's dangerous. Tucson is big, and you don't know who's behind this." Clara nodded. "I'll be careful. And while I'm gone, I need you to finish the well and keep an eye on the ranch. Lock up at night. Beatrice and her men might try something." He agreed reluctantly. Early the next morning, Clara packed a small valise, saddled Rosemary, and began the arduous journey to Tucson, determined to clear Wyatt's name and save Cooper's Crest. Tucson sprawled across the dusty plains like a desert jewel. Adobes and wooden structures mingled, and the bustle of wagons, horses, and people filled the streets. Clara, parched from the journey, first sought a modest boarding house. She introduced herself to the proprietor, a kindly woman named Mrs. Delgado, coincidentally Javier's cousin. Through that tenuous connection, Clara felt a sliver of familiarity in this strange city. After securing a room, Clara began her search. She visited the local saloons and inquired discreetly about Cyrus Lancaster. Some men recalled him as a ruthless businessman, always sniffing out profitable land. She heard rumors that Lancaster had a mysterious partner, someone rumored to be deeply involved in the corrupt side of Tucson's politics. Eventually, she found a bartender who remembered Lancaster with a man named Hank Burnside, a known enforcer. According to the bartender, Lancaster and Burnside had a falling out shortly before Lancaster's death. Burnside's trouble the bartender warned, polishing a glass. "Some say he's a gun for hire. If Lancaster double-crossed him, that's motive enough for murder." Clara's nerves prickled. If this Burnside was the killer, she had to prove it. But how? That evening, Clara's inquiries led her to a seedy gambling hall near the edge of Tucson. Her heart hammered as she entered the smoky establishment alone. Men hunched over card tables, eyes flicking to the newcomer. Clara ordered a sarsaparilla at the bar, scanning the room for a face that matched the descriptions she'd heard of Hank Burnside, broad-shouldered scar on his left cheek, an intimidating presence. She spotted him at a corner table. She took her drink and approached cautiously, ignoring her fear. "Mr. Burnside," she ventured. He glanced up, his eyes as cold as steel. "Who's asking?" Clara swallowed. "My name is Clara Hayes. I'm investigating the murder of Cyrus Lancaster." "I heard you knew him." Burnside scoffed. "What business is that of yours?" She forced her voice to remain steady. "He was going to invest in my fiancé's ranch. Then he ended up dead, and my fiancé's been blamed. I'm trying to find who really did it." Burnside assessed her, his scar twisting as he smirked. "Cooper's woman, huh? That fellow's got a noose around his neck." Clara's heart pounded. "Did you kill Lancaster?" she asked bluntly, surprising even herself. Burnside erupted into laughter, though his eyes held no humor. "You got nerve, lady. I didn't kill him, though I might have if the chance came. The man swindled me out of a cut in a water deal. I heard he made bigger deals with others, left me in the dust." His gaze flicked toward the door. "But I can tell you this Lancaster's last big meeting was with a group from back east. A lady named Rosewood was fronting them. She had men on her payroll to get rid of trouble. Maybe she got rid of him too if their arrangement soured. Clara's blood ran cold. Beatrice Rosewood again. Could she have arranged Lancaster's murder and framed Wyatt to push through a land deal? Burnside eyed her. Now get out of here before I change my mind about talking to you. Terrified Clara thanked him and hurried outside into the warm night air, heart thunderous. If Beatrice was behind everything, she held all the cards, and the Pinkerton detective Edmund Howard might be part of her game. Armed with this new information, Clara spent the next day sending telegrams to Horace Whittaker, and even to Judge Isaac Parker, urging them to consider the possibility that Wyatt was framed by Beatrice Rosewood. She wrote that she had reason to believe Beatrice had both motive and means to eliminate Lancaster, leaving Wyatt as a convenient scapegoat. She also wrote to Wyatt his prison address, scrawled on an envelope. Tears blurred her vision as she described her discoveries, promising she would not rest until she secured his freedom. Yet, as she readied to leave Tucson, she felt eyes on her. Someone was watching. She spotted a figure in a dark coat vanish behind a building when she turned. Fear coiled in her stomach, but she gripped Rosemary's reins and rode out of Tucson, determined to return to Cooper's Crest with haste. Late the following evening, Clara reached the ranch. She found Javier by the barn, his shirt soaked in sweat, but a broad grin on his face. He gestured to the newly dug well. "Look," he said triumphantly. "We've got fresh water. Enough to keep the livestock going at least for a while." Clara's eyes welled with relief. It was a rare slice of good news. She dismounted, patting Rosemary affectionately, and asked Javier about any developments. His face grew grim. Beatrice Rosewood's men came by again, threatening. They said the final date for the bank payment is 2 days away. They plan to swoop in and buy the ranch for pennies if we can't pay. Clara sighed, exhausted. "I made some progress in Tucson, but nothing definitive yet. We need a miracle." As if called by her plea, Horace Whittaker arrived that same night, dusty and out of breath. He carried a telegram in his hand. "It's from Judge Parker himself," he announced, face alight with hope. "He's read your telegram and is reopening the investigation. Wyatt has a hearing tomorrow in Yuma for possible release on bail." Clara's heart soared. If Wyatt could be released on bail, maybe he could help settle the bank debt, or at least fight for an extension. Horace paused, caution in his eyes. "But the judge wants to hear your testimony about these new findings. You'll have to be in Yuma tomorrow morning." Despite her fatigue, Clara nodded. "I'll be there. First light." The next morning, Clara stood in the Yuma courthouse, a small, austere room with rows of wooden benches and a stern-faced Judge Isaac Parker presiding. Wyatt was brought in, shackled at the wrists. The sight of him made Clara's chest tighten. He looked thinner, but determination flashed in his gaze when he saw her. The hearing commenced. The district attorney presented the case against Wyatt, rehashing the feud with Lancaster. Then Horace stood calling Clara to testify about her Tucson discoveries and the suspicious figure of Beatrice Rosewood. She recounted the conversation with Hank Burnside, the intimidation attempts at the ranch, and the letters found in the attic. Judge Parker listened intently occasionally, tapping his gavel to silence the murmurs in the audience. "Miss Hayes," he said in a grave tone, "do you have any proof that Miss Rosewood orchestrated Lancaster's death?" Clara swallowed, her voice trembling, but resolute. "Not concrete proof, Your Honor, but I believe strongly that more investigation will confirm it. Hank Burnside claims Miss Rosewood had reason to turn on Lancaster, and she's been trying to buy our ranch ever since Wyatt was jailed. Judge Parker studied Wyatt, then Clara. Well, I'm not convinced Mr. Cooper is innocent, but I acknowledge there may be a conspiracy at work. I'm granting bail set at $500. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. $500 was a small fortune, but it was at least an opening a chance for Wyatt to step out of his cell and mount a proper defense. Clara rushed to Wyatt's side as the judge banged the gavel signaling the end of the hearing. Their hands met the cold iron of his shackles, pressing against her skin. She searched his face and found gratitude and relief. "We'll find the money," she whispered. "We have to. $500 for bail. Another $300 to stave off the bank. $800 total, a sum that felt insurmountable." As Wyatt was taken back to the prison for processing, Horace and Clara convened outside the courthouse. "Where are we going to find that money?" Horace fretted. "We're behind on everything." Clara drew in a shaky breath. "Maybe there's a solution we've overlooked. The ranch, the attic documents, or maybe that old rumor about ore in the riverbed." Javier mentioned panning for silver. Horace rubbed his chin. "That's a long shot, but we don't have many options. You could also try raising funds from folks who believe in Wyatt's innocence." That gave Clara an idea. A benefit auction, perhaps. The Redwood Saloon sometimes hosts them. If we can gather enough small donations, we might meet the bail requirement. Then with Wyatt out, we can face the bank together. Horace seemed skeptical. "Better move fast. The bank's deadline is in 2 days. I'll talk to the folks in Redwood Gulch, see if we can arrange something tonight." Clara nodded, though her heart pounded with the enormity of the task. Everything hinged on this. That same day, Clara and Horace raced back to Redwood Gulch. They enlisted Martha Rourke's help and the local pastor's support. By nightfall, the Redwood Saloon was brimming with townspeople ready to take part in a benefit auction for Wyatt Cooper's bail fund. Clara stood on a makeshift platform, trembling slightly as she addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. Wyatt Cooper is a good man. He's being framed, and I need your help to raise his bail so he can defend himself properly. If you've ever known injustice, you know how vital it is to stand together." The crowd stirred. Some folks donated livestock or homemade crafts for the auction. Others pledged small sums of money. One by one, items were auctioned off: chickens, quilts, preserves. The final total crept upward, but time was against them. After hours, they raised $400, still 100 short. Clara's heart sank as the crowd began to thin out. A hush fell when a stooped elderly man hobbled forward. "I was a friend of Wyatt's father," he said. "Here's my life savings, $100. He placed a small coin purse on the makeshift table. Tears filled Clara's eyes as the gathered crowd erupted in applause. They had done it $500 for Wyatt's bail. It wasn't enough for the bank, but one step at a time. The next morning, Clara and Horace brought the bail money to Judge Parker. Wyatt was released, stepping into the sunshine, a free man, at least temporarily. The moment Clara saw him, she couldn't hold back. She rushed forward, embracing him. In that instant, the months of letters, the unwavering devotion, and the harsh reality of his imprisonment converged. They didn't have time for a tearful reunion, though. The next deadline was the bank due tomorrow. Wyatt, Horace, and Clara mounted their horses for Redwood Gulch, discussing strategies. "If we can't pay the bank, they'll foreclose," Wyatt said, jaw tight. "We're short $300. Is there any chance of a loan?" Horace shook his head. "No one's willing to lend without collateral which you no longer have if the bank repossesses the ranch, unless you want to sell to Rosewood." Wyatt's eyes burned. "I'll die before I sell to that woman." They reached Redwood Gulch at twilight. A storm had been building all day, and now the sky crackled with thunder. Clara felt the tension in the air. She was about to offer a suggestion when gunshots rang out down the street. Wyatt and Clara dove for cover behind a water trough. Two figures strode toward them, the same rough men who accompanied Beatrice Rosewood before. One brandished a revolver in each hand. "Cooper," he snarled. "Miss Rosewood says you're to sign over the ranch or else." Wyatt growled, "Over my dead body." The gunman fired. The townsfolk scattered, some taking cover inside the saloon. Wyatt and Horace returned fire bullets ricocheting off wooden posts. Clara cowered behind the trough, heart hammering, until she spotted one man flanking them. "Wyatt, watch out!" she screamed. But it was too late. The gunman lunged, knocking Wyatt's pistol away. The two men grappled in the dusty street as lightning cracked overhead. Through the rain that began to fall, Clara saw the second gunman circling around to get a shot. Without thinking, she grabbed Wyatt's fallen pistol from the mud and aimed. Her hands trembled, but she fired, sending a bullet whizzing past the gunman's shoulder. He dove aside, returning fire. Clara yelped, dropping low. Javier appeared from the shadows, ramming the man with his shoulder, disarming him. In the confusion, Wyatt managed to subdue the first gunman, pinning him to the ground. The local sheriff and a posse rushed in, arresting both men. Muddy and exhausted, Wyatt, Clara, Horace, and Javier regrouped, the rain pattering around them. Under interrogation, one of the gunmen confessed to being in the employ of Beatrice Rosewood and her associates. They aimed to force Wyatt into selling the ranch. He also admitted they had arranged Lancaster's murder after their deal soured planting evidence to frame Wyatt. That confession was all the sheriff needed to issue a warrant for Beatrice Rosewood's arrest. Word spread quickly through Redwood Gulch, and Judge Parker, still in the area, ordered the men locked up. Clara felt a rush of relief so profound that her knees nearly buckled. Wyatt, battered but victorious, pulled her close. "You saved me," he whispered, voice cracking. "You saved us." The next day, with the threat of foreclosure still looming, the townsfolk rallied once more, hearing the truth about the conspiracy. Several wealthy ranchers, outraged by Rosewood's actions, pitched in to cover the $300 needed to save Cooper's Crest. The bank manager, upon learning of the plot, reluctantly accepted the payment, and with that, Cooper's Crest was safe from repossession. Within a week, Beatrice Rosewood was apprehended in Tucson, thanks to the sheriff's warrant. Hank Burnside ironically provided additional testimony that sealed her fate. The ring of investors who colluded with her scattered to the winds. Wyatt, finally exonerated, was a free man. Yuma Territorial Prison rescinded his custody. The last time Clara saw that grim fortress was the day she went to sign Wyatt's release papers, a triumphant swirl of finality warming her heart. Returning to Cooper's Crest, Wyatt and Clara faced a ranch still battered but alive with possibility. The new well provided enough water the sick cow recovered, and with the threat of foreclosure gone, they could focus on repairing fences, barns, and their future. In a small ceremony behind the ranch house, under the wide Arizona sky, Clara Hayes and Wyatt Cooper were wed. Only a handful of friends and townsfolk attended Javier Horace Martha Rourke, the elderly benefactor who contributed his life savings, and Dr. McNeil. Even the sheriff came to offer his blessing. The day was simple, yet perfect. Clara wore a white dress borrowed from a neighbor, Wyatt, in a clean suit that fit snug across his shoulders. They exchanged vows, each word heavy with the trials they had endured. As they kissed, the desert breeze carried the scent of mesquite and new life. Months later, Cooper's Crest thrived under the combined efforts of Wyatt, Clara, and Javier. The ranch gradually expanded, new horses were purchased, and the livestock count began to grow. Thanks to the well, the land was more fertile than ever. Wyatt's name was finally cleared in the public record. Judge Parker, having witnessed the corruption, advocated for better oversight of land disputes in the territory. Clara's discovery of Lancaster's threatening letters proved a critical piece of evidence for both Wyatt's freedom and the dismantling of the shady consortium that had plagued honest ranchers. Looking out over the ranch at sunset, Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known. Their union was forged in trial and tempered by faith. She remembered the day she arrived at Yuma Territorial Prison, lost and alone, and marveled at how far they had come. Wyatt took her hand, the warmth of his palm, a reminder that anything was possible when two people dared to believe in each other. Their story, full of twists, heartbreak, and ultimate triumph, would become a local legend. Folks would say that love and loyalty can even conquer the relentless desert sun and the iron bars of injustice. And so, with the horizon ablaze, Cooper's Crest stood as a testament to their courage and a promise that even in the Wild West, where lawlessness reigned, justice and devotion could find their way home. Through bullets and betrayals, Clara Hayes and Wyatt Cooper fought side by side against the scorching desert and the iron bars of corruption. Their unwavering determination not only saved Cooper's Crest from foreclosure, but also proved Wyatt's innocence, toppling a powerful conspiracy in the process. In a land where law was sometimes as fleeting as water in the desert, their story stands as a testament to hope, resilience, and the power of partnership. If you've been moved by Clara and Wyatt's journey from the moment she stepped off that stagecoach at Yuma Territorial Prison to the day they restored Cooper's Crest, we invite you to help keep their legacy alive. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more tales of courage and conquest in the Wild West. Your support ensures that stories of love and justice continue to inspire hearts far and wide. Thank you for watching.